I love being a business analyst. Love it. It's like a 12-step program. You've heard of those. Where you have to say who you are and how you're going to get better and all those good things. Except for I get to keep it this way. So, hello. My name is Jeffrey Davidson, and I'm a business analyst. Now, I've never been part of a program, but I think the response is, hello, Jeffrey. So we're going to try to... Hello, my name is Jeffrey Davidson, and I'm a business analyst.
Hello, Jeffrey.
That's very good. I'm proud of you guys. I love to dig into problems. I love to figure out what's going on. I like to uncover, what's really there and discover what the issues are, the needs are. And I get to make stuff. I get to make requirements. Now, that's not something with my hands, but it's bigger, it's better, it's better. Because when I do my job right, I help someone else make a product. When I do my job right, I change your mind. I get to make a difference in how people think about things. And if that isn't cool, I don't know what is. Louder? No, they're laughing. Really? Okay. This room has got some funny acoustics with those, little things. Okay. Unfortunately, as a profession, we have a problem. As much as we get to make things happen, we get to make ideas, we get to make something comes from a problem, we get to figure out what the solution is, and we get to help define what that space is, and then something comes of it that changes how people work or do their jobs. And that's really cool. We write these great big fat documents. Now, show of hands, who's written a specification document that was 50 pages or more? Please raise your hand. Okay. If it's 100 pages or more, leave your hand up. 200 pages. Okay, we don't have a lot of poor schlubs like me, but we've done this. The problem is that people don't read those documents. I used to coach business analysts, and when I do, I say, make sure that you have no typos. Make sure every table is clear and succinct. Make sure you have good diagrams. And they're like, who cares about the typos? Who cares that this column isn't formatted quite correctly? And I said, you do. And they're like, no, I don't. I said, yes, you do. Because your stakeholders don't have enough time to read 50 or 100, 200 pages. So they read until they find a typo. And they're like, yes, I proved I read this thing. Tell me it's not true. That's what they do. They read until they find proof that they read it, and then I'm all done. And they sign their initials, and 6 months or 18 months or 2.5 years later, they're like, that's not what I wanted. That's a problem. My mother loves me. Who here has a mother? But if you have a mom that doesn't love you, don't raise your hand. But I'm presuming you all have mothers, and they love you. But my big fat document, my mother would never read that thing. Oh my gosh. I can see her looking through it for the first couple pages. She'd stop looking for a typo. She just doesn't care. It's a problem that we have. So, it doesn't have to be this way. It can be better. We can make it better. We're in charge of our destiny. So, the way to make that better is to change, to learn and to share. Now, to do that, we've got to deal with our initial context. What we do is not easy. This is Rich Hickey. He gave a presentation a couple years ago. You can find it online. Great presentation. He's a smart guy. He works more with developers than people like us, the analysts. But the first thing he said is, we can only hope to make reliable those things that we can understand. If you don't understand it, can you explain it? Anyone? If you don't understand it, do you have a lot of hope that someone else will understand it? No, it doesn't work that way. We can only consider a few things at a time. Simple things like phone numbers. The number is 7. You can remember a sequence of 7 numbers. Sometimes it's 5, sometimes it's 9. I practice 10 because there's area codes. But those things, that's about all I can handle. And my wife would tell you I probably can't handle that very well. Complex things, ooh, they're even harder to handle. So if these things are intertwined, if we have lots of things we're working on a project, complex things, a number of things are intertwined. Who's worked on a project that's so simple, there's only one thing, maybe 2 or 3, it's not intertwined, it's not complex? Boy, we have a couple hands. You've worked on a project that didn't have any complexity. I love those projects. You can get my business card and hire me later. The rest of us, so, I don't know, let's say there's 100 people in here. We have 5 hands up. That means 95 of us have never even seen that project. That complexity undermines our understanding. That's a problem. So what are we going to do about that? It's difficult stuff. Do you want to like about being a business analyst? This is my space. This is what I conquer. This is the difficult stuff that we are called to handle. We rock this space. I don't want a lot of other people playing in this space. When I used to hire BAs, I said, I want the top 5% of the smartest people you ever met in your life to be business analysts. And they're like, well, that's a really high bar, Jeffrey. How are we going to get that? Why do you even need that? I said, well, as a business analyst, it's my job to understand the business and the process they're doing and the problem we're having and the scope of that problem and how we're going to solve that problem, probably with a technological solution. And I have to communicate with the developers and the stakeholders and the users. And then we have to make sure that we have to make process changes. And all these things go along. We have to make these changes. That's what the business analyst does. I think that top 5% is probably a pretty good starting place to hire people. I let them talk me down, like the top 25%. And every time a new recruiter would join the firm, they'd say, Jeffrey, we want to talk about this bar you set. And I said, you're right, let's raise it. Because really, business analysts should be the smartest people in the room mostly. We should also be the humblest, but that's a different talk. So that's what we're doing. So I'm a little passionate, you might have noticed that. And I also wear a bow tie, so I can be all professorial. You know, and just kind of like lecture to you. Well, I can try. But instead what I want to do is I want to tell a story. And I want to tell a story about me and requirements of when I tried Scrum. Now, this is like 5 years ago. My first job, my boss said, is kill this stuff, make sure it doesn't succeed. And it was my goal, so I tried to kill it. After about a year, I realized, oh, it's better at some things. But so I tried to get on board. All that to say that as I'm going through this process, we had ditched everything about requirements. We ditched what we knew about rendering requirements. So we wrote a lot of things that were, well, we called them acceptance criteria, but it was really any old hodgepodge of things. It was things like insert this field into, you know, customer.table.db.address, or whatever it was. Sometimes it's way too detailed. Sometimes it's way too general. Sometimes it was a design thing. And these requirements, I just wasn't happy about. So then, Scott Selhorst, he's a blogger down in Austin, at tynerblaine.com. He's working communicating, he goes, so do you use the system shall in your requirements or acceptance criteria? And you would think, being a smart guy, would have realized this. After a year, acceptance criteria equals requirements. I didn't. But his simple question made me think, oh my gosh, acceptance criteria are requirements. So if you're doing Agile or Scrum, they're the same thing. But what you do is you don't write the system shall, and it fools the developers. If you write the system shall, the developers get mad. So you don't write that line. You just reformat the sentence a little bit and it works. It's all good. So that's what I did. Now, I didn't think they were great, but you know, that's what I'm doing. So I finally realized that there's more to Agile and Scrum than just those things. Here's the thing is, I'm busy preaching that business analysts should be masters of communication. And that's what you should tell my staff. We need to be masters of communication. We need to be the people who are understanding everything, who are communicating it. How many people have said that I am a translator? and I translate between the business. Okay, I think I've said it hundreds of times. It's probably one of the worst things I've said. It's a terrible thing to say. It is. And we're going to get to that. But that's not what we should really be about, because interpreting means that we really don't understand. It means that I'm trying my best to help you understand something that's foreign. Instead of doing that, I should be understanding value. Now, wouldn't that be cool if I could say, hello, my name is Jeffrey and I'm master of value. Okay, now, I want everyone to say, I am master of value. Ready? I am master of value. Now, do you think that's going to build a good spirit with your team and help your job security if you walk around saying that? Does anyone think you can walk around shouting, I'm master of value? And the truth is, as BAs, we should feel this way. You know, I have a little daughter. She's 6. And when we first started watching Ariel, she would call me Daddy Sea King. And I love that name. Wasn't that a great name? I should change my Twitter handle to Daddy Sea King. But when she would say, Daddy, you're Daddy Sea King, and I would stand up straight, and I'd puff up my chest a little bit, and I'd deepen my voice. I'm like, I'm Daddy Sea King. And I would say, hi, Daddy Sea King. No, we need to be proud. I'm master of value. But again, I can't say that at work, so it doesn't quite work. So I started thinking, if I'm master of value, if this is my job, is to manage values, to make sure that the good stuff happens, to make sure that we understand that problem and that we're going from problem to great solution, and we're doing what's valuable, and we're convincing the customers or the clients or the stakeholders to ditch the stuff that doesn't have value, and there's a lot of it, I know. What do we need to do? And I realized that value comes from understanding. That the whole point of my job, you know, I like to say I'm master of value. That sounds really cool. Put it on a business card. But that's not what it's really about. It's about understanding. That value that I'm master of is understanding. I need to make sure that people understand what's going on. I've been in 2 different talks today, and both of the people talked about context. That's the context. I want to understand what the context is. And I want to understand what the context of the solution is, and the context of the problem, and the context of the users. I want to get these things. There's a great big bunch of understanding we need to do there. This is my realization. There's no difference between requirements and understanding. This is my tweetable moment for the presentation. I'm a really big believer, and it took me a long time to get here, that requirements and understanding, they're the same darn thing. That if I write a requirement, the system shall, and trust me, I've argued for that particular language more than you care to know. I can have hours and hours of conversation why it should start with the system shall, why Moscow is a bad set of, guidelines. I'm arguing over peanut shells on the deck of the Titanic. The important thing is the value of the project, the value that we're going to be delivering, the value of addressing this need. And that comes from understanding. So I started thinking through this, and I said, on my journey, what do I need to be doing? So I gave it some thought, and I came up with some principles. Now, other people have said variations of this. I'm not a rocket scientist. I work with people who claim they were, and they weren't all that smart either. But we build better software when we understand the goals of what we're building. So we need to understand those things. That's a key part of this. Any questions? No? Okay. Okay. We are working on difficult concepts. I need every tool possible to increase understanding. I talked about this already when I was quoting Rich Hickey. We deal with the tough stuff. No, they call it us, the business analyst. Analyst, doesn't that sound like an important word? They call it us, the masters of value, so that we can make sure these difficult concepts are understood. And we need to use every tool possible. So when I started Scrum and I dished good requirements, that was bad. I had a good tool in my tool belt, and I forgot to use it. The third thing is, we want a common understanding for everyone involved. And this is part of my problem with the idea of saying, I'm a translator. I translate what the business wants to what the developer is building. Because I want a common understanding. When I can get a common understanding from the user, to me, or to the stakeholder, then to me, the analyst, then to the developer, then to the tester, and then back to the user again, when we all understand the same thing, both the problem and the solution, then I think we've got something. Then I think that we can take this and say that I've done good analysis. Then I've enabled everyone to look at the same worldview. And this worldview is incredibly important. Because step one, we build better software when we understand the goals of what we're building. If I don't understand your context, how can I understand your goals? So this is my logical chain. There's no difference between requirements and understanding. There's some corollaries. Or I need to fill up another slide with words. Okay. We build a common understanding best. We communicate using natural language. So, I just said I could talk like a professor. I could use my 20-cent words, and I could put them in great big long sentences, and I could make sure that every sentence I speak, the average syllable count is 3 or 4 or 5, and that from that, and they're really long run-on sentences, they're about a paragraph or 3 paragraphs long each sentence. Do you know what? That's communication, but it's not understanding. That's me saying I'm highfalutin, you saying good luck. That's not what we should be about. So, natural language in business terms. And that means even the developers need to understand the business terms. Repeat that after me. Even the developers need to understand the business terms. We're one team. What are they? In Timbuktu and they don't care anymore? No, we should have a common understanding. And that includes the whole team. And here, functional requirements are best understood in a context. And that context is actors, actions, and results. Those things are called stories. Who's ever heard of a story? The first recording of a written story is about Cheops, which was like 6,000 years ago. Non-biblical story. So these stories, I'm not talking about user stories. I'm talking about a story. So let me give you an example. And I'm going to need your help here in this example. This is a little bit. You ready? Okay. Did you hear that fire? There's a fire burn. I want everyone to put out their hands a little bit. Warm themselves by the fire. Okay. Now, imagine a time, let's say 6,000 years ago, and you're in a tribe. Now, they didn't have cell phones. They didn't have a lot of things there. You had the tribe of people that you were born to. You knew them intimately. These people didn't give you surprises. You knew what was going to happen. And as the cold months start, you think, we need to gather more food. So the tribe organizes a hunt. And they go and they chase the buffalo and the bison. Well, probably just one or the other. So we're chasing the buffalo, and then we kill them. We kill a buffalo, and the tribe eats. And the tribe has food for the coming months when it's too cold to go out hunting. When everything is migrated further away. And at the end of this day, around this fire that we're all warming our hands on, that as we're doing this, the tribal elder comes out. And he walks slowly, and everyone gets quiet. We know what's going to happen. He's going to tell a story. He's going to tell a story once again that we know and we hold dear. This is a story about the purpose of our tribe and about how we survived tough winters before and how bountiful the summer was. And we're going to talk about how Ugg was chasing that bison in through the spear and how he tripped over the rock and rolled down the hill. And we're all going to laugh at that. And then he's going to talk about how we got the bison and we ate it and it gave nourishment to us. and how this extra food is going to carry us through the winter. He's going to talk about how one thing leads to another, how the tribe is good, and how the tribe needs food, and how that food is going to sustain us, and about how Og, started off, with a spear, and then he ran, and then he tripped, and then he fell. These are stories. There's a set context. There's a set things to telling a story. I'm going to give you an aside now that I've been telling a story to my little girl lately. Back to her. Her name's Kate. And I said, she wants a short story. It's bedtime. And she wants it scary. And I said, once upon a time, there was a short story. And it was very scary. And she pulls the covers up. The end. And she goes, Daddy, there's no people. And they didn't do anything. That's not a story. I made a statement, and I put the end. So, as we're going through this story, we want to be masters of communication. I think it's possible that what we need to be as business analysts is master storytellers. We need to be able to talk about what we're doing in the context of a story. And the reason I say that is that back then, 6,000 years ago as a tribe, we communicated using stories. Now, the elder did not start off his story. The tribe shall eat 2.4 kilograms of meat. Og ran 1.8 kilometers. Og tripped, broke tibia. Those are a bunch of statements. There's no context. They're boring. Who wants to read that? My mother does not want to read 200 pages of that garbage. My stakeholders do not want to read 200 pages. They don't want to read 5 pages of that garbage, quite frankly. I've had developers who are going to read 3 pages out of the document. I say, read section 17.4.1. It's 3 pages long. They never even open it up. So, we need to tell stories. Because stories are one of the 2 ways that our race, humanity, communicates in. One is stories, one is pictures. By the way, you should also use it in pictures. But this is the story lecture, so we're going to talk about stories. And stories have 3 parts. Everyone hold up 3 fingers. 1, 2, 3. How many parts is that? 3. Can anyone not remember 3 things? I know it's complex, and complexity is hard to understand. 3. 1, 2, 3. You start off with a context. You and your condition. That's it. Once upon a time, there was a fairy princess. I'm setting the stage. There's princesses, and she's a fairy. It's once upon a time means not yesterday. So that's you in your context. The next thing it does is there's an event. The princess poked her finger on the spinning wheel. So when we have this is what happens. This is an event. There's something that occurs. And you know what? Something happens. That's it. There's a response. What do you see? It's not very hard. We start off with, there's a condition. You exist. You're someplace in time and space. Then you do something, and then there's a response. So, what are behavior-based requirements? They're fine-grained, focused bits of behavior. Really fine-grained. Kind of like those system shell statements, but they're about behavior. And they're told in a story format. So I'm going to go back to this. You and your condition, we use a given structure, a set structure. We start off given. Given, there is a princess. And then I say when. When she pokes her finger on the spinning wheel, then she falls asleep. Given, when, then. Now, this is part of the BDD, or behavior-driven development concepts. It's in the Agile extension to the BABA or BABA. Your choice of how you want to say it. Sometimes it's called a Gherkin format. I'm calling it behavior-based requirements. Because I'm not concerned about those after requirements. I'm a business analyst. What I'm concerned about is understanding. What I'm concerned about is value. And people get value, and they understand value, and they understand stories. So, ooh, this is what I want to do. Okay, so what is it? It's a bunch of tiny stories using a particular grammar structure. Does anyone not know what the structure is? Oh, you've all got it. Very good, very good. Okay. It's finding places of misunderstanding and filling it with understanding. So if I don't understand something, I can go and fill it with understanding. So how many of you have ever interviewed a customer or sat with someone on a project to see what they're doing? Okay, most hands are going up. So, and when you do that, I like to start off with saying, what do you do first? Okay, I know who they are. Their name is Julian. So Julian sits there and says, well, first thing I log in. Oh, he logs in. Given, it's a Julian. When Julian logs in, then what happens, Julian? Oh, then I see the screen. Sweet, I got my first given when then. I have my first requirement. I say, does anything ever go wrong with that, Julian? Oh, well, sometimes I can't remember my password. I changed it on Friday, today's Monday, and I get a character wrong. Oh, so given Julian is trying to log in, when he mistypes his password, then, well, what does the system show you, Julian? And he tells me, this is a conversation. Have you ever had a conversation where you said, what happened next? And what can go wrong? You're doing given, when, then. You're setting a context, you're saying something happens, and then there's a result. This is who we are as people. We understand A leads to B, leads to C, leads to D, leads to E. Whether it's causality or sequence or whatever you want to call that concept, we really get that. We understand that if I drop a hammer and my toe is underneath it, it's going to hurt. Given I have a hammer, when I drop it, then I scream. Okay, so that's what it is. And it's just a conversation captured. That's the beauty of this. So while this technique is in the Agile extension to the Babok/Babok, I don't care. I think every single one of us has already done this, and every single one of us should use this, because this is effectively capturing things. And not only that, in this conversation, did I ever once say, the system shall? Did everyone say, then the system of gravity shall pull the hammer at 9.6 meters per second until it hits my foot? No. I didn't have to say that. That's a design implementation. I don't need to know that right now. I need to know the functionality. Hammers fall towards the center of gravity and my foot's in the way. So, business terms in natural language, we want to make it understandable. And that means from developers, testers, users, stakeholders, analysts, and anybody else. So imagine your grandmother following these directions. And we want to be generic over specific. So I don't want to know when I'm talking about Julian logging into the screen and he mistypes his password every single way when I'm writing this requirement. Because I don't want to specify the design that's going to have to happen later on for the developers. I want to talk about the functionality. We'll get to it a little more. So we want generic behavior without design. And here's a way to think about it. If you used to type requirements for a computer system, imagine someone's going to access this over the telephone. So if your design specifically says, I must scroll, or I must select the radio button, or I must have a drop-down. But you know what? Not all telephone interfaces, at least the little iPhone or Android or Windows phone, have the same kind of interface requirements. So leave that out of your requirements in your given when then. I'm not saying it's not in the context of what you're doing, but you don't need to write that. So with that being said, we're going to work together. Now, I looked at this room earlier today. If you missed that moment where that was, I looked at the room earlier today, and it's really hard for me to use like a sheet of paper that the people in the back of the room can use. So I'm going to give you an example, and then I want you to write out some requirements. First, we're going to kind of shout out, then we're going to write some things out. So I want to start a new transportation service. I want to start a blimp running from here in Minneapolis down to my home in Dallas. Does that make sense? I think that blimp travel is the wave of the future. Some people say it's teleportation or, hover cars. No, blimps are on the way back. So, with that, I need a reservation system. So, using the system shall, someone give me a requirement for my reservation system. Okay, the system shall allow passengers to book a trip. That makes sense? Okay, what's another requirement that we're going to have on the reservation system?
The system shall cut
Okay.
off, the system shall cut off reservations after 50 people.
Okay, he says the system shall cut off reservations after 50 people. That's a bit specific. My first blimp can only hold 15, and I've got a problem. My next blimp can hold 60. So I'm probably going to say it has to cut off when we're full. Does that sound okay? What's a third one?
This will allow you to specify the day of departure.
Oh, we get to specify the day of departure. Okay, that sounds good. Now, because it's a startup company, I've only got a couple blimps, we're going to imagine there's only one blimp ride a day. I'm not going to get too specific after that. So we have 3 requirements. The first one was, we allow people to book a reservation, right? And the second one, the system shall cut off when all the seats are full, or all the rides are full, or whatever you want terminology there. I said we should use business terms. What should my business terms? When all the gondola baskets, that's my business terms. When all my gondola baskets are full. And the third one was that the system shall allow the user to specify which day. Okay, does that make sense?
No,
No?
no, that's because I'm part of the blimp.
They're my blimps! And I got a lot of them hanging underneath. I didn't say it was effective. And obviously there's no one going in between the blimps to give you water. So those are my 3, and actually, by the way, that's a great comment. Because he would say, well, blimps don't have gondola baskets. And they would say, well, does that mean it's a literal basket, or is it a seat that we're just calling a basket? There's all kinds of conversations we could have to say, what did you mean by that? So those are great requirements for us to think, okay, how can we do that? So, turn to your partners, pick one of those 3 that we have there. Everyone remember the 3? And write it as a given, when, then statement. Okay. Excuse me. So everyone has this little book here. Pull out your little book. Take your little pen. Write. So take out of those 3 requirements. Turn to your neighbor and write one of them as a given, when, then statement. If I can have your attention, please. Your attention, please. So I'm capturing your attention, and I know you're not done. I'm going to give you another minute. So hold on. I just wanted to. I went over to some nice gentlemen over here, and I said, "How did you do?" They said, "We're done. We think we probably got it mixed up though." So I'm going to read their given, when, then, and give you some analysis on it. So they said, given when customer wants to go to a given location. Okay. They said, I'm reading what someone wrote down, and then I'm going to go work through this. It said, given, when a customer wants to go to a given location, when they have a day of travel decided, then they pick the day from the available dates. So, and I'm going to say that's a little jumbled, but this is the first time for them, so that's okay. It's going to be a little jumbled. So I'd probably say, so given, I like to write these first person. And I'll say that I'm a customer. So I'm a customer, and given I want to travel, when I select a day in the system, then the system confirms. Or the system doesn't confirm. This is an alternate case, obviously. It could be, depending on what kind of system the team is building, when I look for a day, then the day is not available if it's not there. So do you see where I showed that? So I try to make this personal. I try to tell this me stories or I stories. So given I, as a customer, want to travel, when I select a day, or when I go looking for a day, depending on that, then the system confirms. Does that make sense? So I'm trying to break it down into tiny bits of functionality. So how do we do? So one of the questions is, were you design agnostic? And I walked around and talked to 3 or 4 different groups, and you guys are doing great on that. And most teams were very good about using natural language. And things were largely in business terms. You know, we got there, so it was a good start. But one of the things I didn't stress enough, I just kind of talked around it, but I want to stress, is that this needs to be personal. So, may I use your examples again? You know what I'm talking about now. So, the original was that, given the blimp has limited seating, I would hate to start a story to my daughter. Once upon a time, the blimp had limited seating. Is that any kind of story? She would say, Daddy. So once upon a time, I wanted to take a ride on a blimp. Make this personal. Make this about the user. You can specify I, the customer, or I, the blimp manager, seating manager. You can get into those details later. But the point is, make it personal. So, given I want to take a blimp ride. So, when the capacity has been reached. Well, that's specific, but let's, when there are no more seats available. Maybe actually we're under capacity, but there's a weight issue because we're carrying the mail, or we're shipping water because they want ice from Minnesota down in Dallas. I don't know whether we're shipping water or mail, but we are. So our capacity for seats is less. So the point is, is when there are no more seats available. And then they will then stop accepting reservations. But that's what the system does. I want to see what the user talks about, because remember, this is a story. So, given I want to take a ride on a blimp, when there's no more seats available, then I get a message. Then I'm told, come back tomorrow for an even better ride. But I don't know what we're going to say, but there's going to be some kind of message there. Does that make sense? So, make these stories personal. Now, examples and requirements. So I'm talking about these stories, this behavior-based requirements, and those are all generic, but there are times for examples. So we'll just use this one about seating capacity, or no seats available. Examples amplify what we know, and they point out holes in understanding. There, when you're having a conversation with someone, you say, what else could happen? Why else might you not have seats? Oh, they took the seats out. Why? They put a giraffe in the back? Okay, whatever. I don't know why my blimp has a giraffe, but I think it'd be a cool ride. So we want to have examples, and they take these requirements and make it real. In the BDD format, these are called scenarios. And if you're using automated testing, then these are really powerful because they help you understand what are the boundaries to your story. So, using this example we talked about in seating capacity, I want to walk through, let's amplify. So, given I as a customer. So, that's a single customer. So, my example, I want to say that one paying passenger, or one passenger, I hope they're paying. Or maybe paying doesn't make a difference. It's just one passenger. Okay? And when? When they go to book the ticket, we have to compare the seating capacity. So there were 20 seats on a gondola typically. So if it's one and they're the first one, then that passes. So my seating capacity is currently at 0, or currently at 20, and my build-up has been 0, so there's room. But maybe when I, as a family, and there's 16 in my family, well, I'm taking my cousins and parents. So when I'm taking the 16 people, when I as a family are booking the tickets, for the blimp ride, I want to test, for the seating capacity. Well, we've already sold 5 tickets on a 20-passenger blimp ride. Can the 16 people get on board? No. So an example will help you specify what the boundaries are. Does that make some sense? I'm seeing some nodding heads, but not everyone. Okay, I'm going to try to leave a couple minutes for questions, and I'll be around all day. So, then I'm going to get that message. And it could be there's a different message for the blimp is already sold out for today, or the weather is bad, so I don't want to fly at all, or whatever. I may have different conditions depending on what my when conditions are that I put in there. There may be different things. So in my example, I'm going to be very specific about this. So these are examples. They're going to specify, amplify, be a scenario that proves my overall behavior-based requirement. And if I have an automated tool, I can insert these into the tool. So if I was doing some stock program, I'd say, when my stock hits a certain limit, then sell it. I have stock. When I hit a limit, sell it. But in my scenarios, I could talk about IBM stock and Apple stock and Google stock, and I could use examples in different conditions. That's very specific. So one's a bit more general. It's a personal story with I. One that's very specific. What are the details there? So what are the benefits to doing this? Goiko Adzik wrote this book, Specification by Example, and a couple other books. He's got a whole list of benefits, but the assurance that stakeholders and delivery teams understand what needs to be delivered in the same way. When I have scenarios, when I have requirements that tell the story and give some examples that amplify everything, then we're all on the same page. That's sweet. Because wasn't that my goal? Wasn't that my goal, was to build a common understanding? This does that. When you have those examples, those scenarios I talked about, the numbers, how many passengers, I'm trying to book a ticket versus how many seats are available, that's very precise. So we get rid of wasteful rework. And the functional gaps shouldn't be there. Because I've written plenty of documents where I knew that my 6 system shall statements actually had about 20 pages of implications. I shouldn't have written it that way, but I did. I'm just being honest. I don't work there anymore, so I can't get in trouble. But I've done that. There were implications in my document, and I didn't call it every one. But if I have functional requirements told in the story format, I can capture those. And it's a nice objective way to measure that the work is done. That's a really good thing. So who benefits? Everyone. There's no person who doesn't benefit. Everyone. All those people will help when you have a common language. All those people will be helped when they have a common understanding. All those people will be helped when they are on the same page and they understand the same story about where we're starting and where we're going and how we're going to get there. Well, my system crashed, excuse me.
Should have used a PC.
That was really fun.
Yeah.
So there are lots of tools out there. Or was it because I was using a Microsoft product? I don't know. So the tools, actually, and they get a bad rap. They've done a lot of good for the world. The software world before Microsoft came along was a much worse place. So, but it's not about the tools. Lisa Crispin wrote this in a book that talking about these behavior-based requirements used a different word for it, but it's not about the programmer's coding, though that's a benefit. There's all kinds of benefits to these things. But the real thing is we are driving understanding. We are getting people involved. When people get involved, they care more. When people get involved, they contribute more. When they contribute more, we have something that's better at the end. Quite frankly, I'm tired of software projects that are a maintenance nightmare, that don't meet the business need, that spend 2 or 10 or 20 plus million, and in the end, that money is lost. 60+% of software requirements or software features are rarely or never used. I think we probably didn't understand enough before we built the darn thing. Okay, so there are some downsides from using behavior-based requirements. I've got to be honest with you. If you're in an Agile and you count points for your Scrum or your iteration, it may not help you with your velocity. You may not actually be faster. And I've talked to experts, some of those Agile Manifesto signers who say, well, we don't care because it doesn't help the team write software faster. My thought is, it just helps us understand better And we're not using it because it doesn't help our speed. I gotta tell you, which is more important? Understanding and building the right thing, or getting crap out the door faster? Do you want this hand, or that hand? Drives me crazy. Okay, this is new, or newish, to lots of VAs. The truth is that there are probably developers who have tested some of the tools and have therefore written some requirements or restated your requirements like this. It always shocks me that there are more developers who know how to write requirements this way than VAs. I don't understand that at all. That's why I'm out here today. I flew across the country. I'm from Dallas. It's like 80 degrees there today. Yeah, it's terrible. But I'm here because I think this is important. Because I'm tired of developers having to rewrite requirements so that everyone can understand it better. Why don't I just give it to them that way? That's what I want us to do. Okay, there are tools. And they can cause you to slow down because you're learning something new. Yeah, learning something new can sometimes slow you down. Okay, that'll happen. But this is it. Our job, understanding. Our job, master of value. Jeffrey, I am Jeffrey, master of value. But I get to be that because I build understanding. I am not called a master of value because I wrote the system shall, or I wrote an agile story and I left off those 3 words. No, I get that, not just because of this. I'm a facilitator of understanding. I help people understand more. There's an example I want to tell you, and it's about ferry boats and bridges. Now, does everyone know what a ferry boat is? Does everyone know what a bridge is? Okay, as an analyst, as a traditional analyst, I am a ferry boat. And you are my stakeholders and users, the people who give me requirements. You are my world-class development team. And when I'm doing traditional requirements, I am a ferry boat. And what I do is I come over here and I say, what you need, what you want, what's the goals? Okay, let's write some requirements. I write the requirements and I put them on my back. I'm a ferry boat, just like cars. They put them on my back. And the requirements are on my back, and I've got to take them over there. Toot toot! It's not quick. Hey, here are my requirements. And I give everyone over here on my world-class development team requirements. Do you know what? They are so good. You guys are so good. Do you know what you do? You ask me questions. Put those questions on the back. They put their questions on the back of the ferry boat, and I've got to take them over there and get some answers. Toot toot! When you're a ferry boat, sometimes some other thing gets in front of you like a speedboat. And if you're a business analyst, maybe your stakeholder's on vacation. So what you do, you just sit here in the middle of the water doing nothing. Toot toot! And I unload my questions. And they're so glad that I'm asking questions. And then I load up the answers. You know what I gotta do next? And I go back and forth. And back and forth. And back and forth. That is Jeffrey, the business analyst ferry boat. And I have to tell you that that is not productive. That, as an interpreter, only adds confusion. That wastes time. But imagine instead that I facilitated understanding. Imagine I held up my arms between the business, my stakeholders, and my development team. And I facilitated understanding like a bridge. And the questions and the conversation went back and forth in a common language. And everyone understood what we were doing. That would make a difference. That's the BA I want to be. Thank you very much.